Hello and welcome to this webinar from Meeting Expectations titled Incentives and Rewards Programs Make Yours Matter in 2021. I'm Joey Sermon, Senior Manager of Digital Marketing with Meeting Expectations, and I'm joined today by one of my coworkers, Lisa Neylon, Senior Director of Global Sales, as well as Elaine Macy from Reimagine and Alan Schweier from the Incentive Research Foundation. Before we get started, I'd like to let everyone know this webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be available in the next few days on our website at meetingexpectations.com. During the webinar, all attendees will be muted. We do invite and encourage questions and ask you to enter your questions in the Q&A box in the webinar control panel. We will try to answer as many questions as we can during the Q&A segment at the end of the webinar. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our panelists to introduce themselves and tell us what experience they bring to our discussion today. Let's start with you, Lisa.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning, and thank you to our panelists as well. My name is Lisa Neylon. I am the Senior Director of Global Sales with Meeting Expectations. I have actually been with the company for the last 8.5 years and the first CIS, Certified Incentive Specialist, to be part of the organization. And prior to that, I spent 25 years on the hotel and resort side in a sales capacity as Director of Sales and Marketing and National Sales.
Great, thanks. Elaine, tell us about yourself and about Reimagine.
Hi, my name is Elaine Macy, and thank you so much for having me, Lisa and Joey. I've started a new company. I came from the incentive world, working with Merits and another incentive company, and then went into the hotel world, and for 14 years worked for Preferred Hotels and Resorts. And now I'm a partner in a new company called Reimagine. And what we're doing is reimagining the connection between the client and the hotels, and helping to help you experience new hotels and boutique hotels that no one might know, and special places. It's a pleasure to be here, and we look forward to this.
And we're grateful that you're here. Alan, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about the IRF?
Sure, Joey, thanks. First of all, thank you everyone for joining us. I'm also very pleased to be here today. I am with the Incentive Research Foundation, which is also known as the IRF. I've been with the IRF for about 12 years, conducting research into pretty much every aspect of incentives and rewards, including recognition, and especially into incentive group travel. So looking forward to this conversation today and adding what I can.
Great, thanks so much. Let's dive right into the questions and start things off just with some definitions. So what is a non-cash incentive program, and why would an organization want to create one? Let's start with you, Lisa.
Well, a non-cash incentive are items that employees would not purchase for themselves. What we always tell our clients is that what you want to keep in mind is the most important asset in any company is your employees. So keeping employees happy can make your company stronger, drive results with more revenues. Incentives go beyond the standard benefits of 401ks and health benefits. This is about creating the best atmosphere for employee retention and driving results. When rewarding an employee with money, it's effective, but money's spent and then it's forgotten, right? So incentive programs create memories and experiences that many employees may not have had if these programs were not in place. Alan's going to talk about specific statistics from IRF, but what we always share with our clients is that 46% of US businesses now are using some sort of incentive program to generate revenues and to generate retention and results. Well-designed and well-executed incentive travel program can increase sales, productivity, and most importantly, ROI. One quick story that I have is that we have a manufacturing client that we started with 6 years ago. They didn't have an incentive plan in place. We sat with them, we wrote it, and the first destination that they decided to go to was Hawaii. So this was 150 winners that they were looking to send to Hawaii. The age group was 45 to 65. And many of these people hadn't traveled before. And the winner of the event, and I love this story, he stood up in Hawaii and talked about that when this plan had been released and they were, trying to win it. He told his wife, you know what, we've never been to Hawaii. We've been married for 40 years. We're going to Hawaii. And he won the trip. And he stood up there and really talked about that, living in Minnesota and being on sales calls in 30 below zero weather and talking about working late at night. But the results of having that experience is something he'll remember forever. And he's my favorite Christmas card that I get every year. So those are why incentive plans, actually non-cash rewards, actually benefit organizations.
Elaine or Alan, anything to add?
No, the only thing I would say is, there's sales incentives, and then there are also incentives for non-sales people. Some of the companies in the tech business have non-sales incentives, and they are people who may never have traveled, never been on an airplane, and that is an emotional experience to just work on one of those. It's really special.
Great, thanks. Alan, this one's for you. The pandemic caused significant changes across our personal and business lives. As the leading organization tracking the incentives industry, what trends are you and the IRF seeing for the incentives industry today that are different than before the pandemic?
Yeah, well, this won't surprise anyone, but incentive group travel especially is way down. Very few organizations that we've surveyed or interviewed have conducted, big group incentive group travel in the past at least 12 months, if not longer, due to the pandemic. There has been some individual travel though, and that's a trend we're seeing. Although I would say that the main replacement for incentive group travel has been merchandise, gift cards. So big increases there, and also reaching further down into the organization. So whereas maybe the top 10% might have earned a group travel reward in the past by switching to merchandise points, other forms of recognition and reward, we're seeing that organizations are reaching sometimes every employee, but certainly well into the middle 60%, which is a good thing. And I think something that'll continue a little bit after this too. A lot of creativity because of COVID. So the old idea that, adversity sometimes is the mother of all invention. We've seen gifting that, includes sending cooking items. A celebrity chef may join a Zoom call. The reward earners kind of gather around on the Zoom call. We've seen companies bring in famous musicians like Bono for very intimate concerts that are sort of like backstage passes. A lot of creativity and choice. A lot more personalization of the reward. Again, something that might continue after COVID as well, a trend that probably will continue. And then as we come out of COVID, where our surveys are also showing a huge demand and appetite for a return to in-person events and incentive group travel. But this time, and we're going to talk about the health and safety aspects of it a little later on, but contingency plans. So in the past, whenever we surveyed organizations or had focus groups, we'd hear about making plans for the weather, because when you do a big event, a lot of it's outside, and weather has always been the biggest disruptor of these events. But now we're hearing, let's plan for all sorts of contingencies, maybe even have a physician on site, but certainly have plans if someone gets sick, if there's, even mass shooting events because of what happened in Las Vegas a few years ago. So a lot more planning. And, but overall, one of the biggest trends we're seeing is planning for incentive group travel in mid 2021 and through 2022, almost to the point that organizations have to get on the ball and book now, because a lot of the hotel rooms and venues are getting booked up.
Lisa and Elaine, what kind of trends have you seen? Do you have anything to add to that?
Lisa?
What I'm saying is we're getting a big demand in the terms of incentive of companies going in smaller groups, so, and staggering their winners. So for example, let's say you had 200 winners in a program with spouses, they're splitting those up and having them go in different time periods. So what we're having to do, because of the hotels and resorts being at different occupancies now, is really plan in advance. It's a much different planning process than this was a year ago. We also launched our Me Rewards program that we'll be talking about later. That's an individual rewards program that Alan actually referred to, that allows people to travel individually or in small groups. But we're also seeing a big demand for more domestic oriented locations such as Arizona, California, Texas, states that Florida, that are open and able to accommodate what people are trying to actualize with their incentives. Elaine, did you have any location?
The only thing I would say is we're seeing at Reimagine, we're getting incentive leads now that we were shocked that they were starting to come in so soon. And normally it's small. And I know later we're going to talk a little bit about the protocols and everything for incentives, but if they're small. But last week we got one that was 3 waves, 170 rooms. And we were also told by a few major incentive houses that there were a dozen or more incentives they were planning for the fall of this year. So I think it's going to come back faster than we think.
We can hope so. Well, thank you all for that. I would like to remind our attendees that the Q&A box is open. So if you have any questions, if you think of anything as we're discussing this, please go ahead and put your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll try to make time for those at the end of the webinar. Let's move on and talk about safety, which is on everyone's mind. There's a good deal of confusion about how safe travel is now, even as we're rolling out vaccines and restrictions are being lifted in some areas. What does it look like for those who offer travel incentives, and what are the destination trends that we can expect this year and on into next year? Elaine, let's start with you.
Okay, that's sort of our sweet spot for at Reimagine. We have a number of small boutique hotels and islands, and in incentives, we feel, and this has proven true over the last month for sure, starting, people want to be safe. They want to feel they travel in a bubble. They want to be in a residence or a villa, and they want to be on islands. They want to be in more remote places. They're willing to go to Machu Picchu or Mozambique or a safari, where they have more outside fresh air, more freedom, and more, even though they're together in a small group, they still social distance, they still have time with their spouses. And I think during the pandemic, people bonded more with their families. So I think you're going to find that incentives are a continuation of that bonding, and that they're going to be looking for wellness. They're going to be looking for safety, security. Of course, COVID protocols are very important. I keep hearing about the digital passports. We'll see about that. But I know that Mexico, I would talk to a hotel yesterday in one of our hotels in Mexico, and they said that April and May of next year are full. And I do have to say to anybody listening to this that is in the incentive business, it's sort of a seller's market right now, which is amazing. We're not going to see the rates before the pandemic that went lower and more competitive. We're going to see higher rates and full hotels. And I agree with what Alan said. If you're going to do a program, you ought to book it now, because April and May are full. And I work with a number of Greek islands, and the Greek islands already have, out of the UK, the flights are all full to the Greek islands for this summer. So I think that's a trend that we should look at for the future, the next 18 months. Everybody wants to go somewhere now.
Yep, I know I do. And Alan, I believe you're attending IRF coming up in a couple of months. Tell us about the protocols that are in place there.
Sure, and I should point out I'm in a hotel room right now for the first time in a long time at a big resort that has I don't know how many rooms, probably about 1,000 rooms. And everybody is observing the face mask protocol to a T. The hotel is very careful to have cleaning stations throughout. I think every other room is empty for now, but very impressed and with the protocols here. And yeah, Joey, on June 2nd to the 5th, we'll be at another big resort. It's the Marco Island Beach Resort in Florida. And the IRF is holding its annual invitational, and that usually is about 500 to 600 people. We didn't do it last year because of COVID, but we're so far, and I think pretty much assured that we're doing it this year. It's completely sold out, even though it's not until June. So that's a great sign. The protocols will be formally announced on April 30th, but so far, things like testing, showing that you had been tested the previous 3 days before the event, masks in public areas, social distancing, so that there won't be as big, dinners where people are, 10 to around kind of thing, or 12 to around, maybe half of that. I mentioned earlier, there are lots of health and safety contingency plans in place. And so far, we're talking about contact tracing, so that you would wear a device, attendee, in case someone did get sick, there would be a way to very quickly know who they had been in contact with, and let those people know, so there could be measures taken that way. So we are definitely observing all the protocols now. We won't know exactly what those will be on June 2nd to 5th, but on April 30th, all the attendees are going to get an updated list of what they'll be as of April 30th.
Great. And Lee, what are we seeing with our clients at Meeting Expectations and the data that we're collecting through the Meetings Accomplished initiative?
Great question. But just to add to Alan's point, I'm actually attending IRF with him. So I will be at the JW Marriott June 2nd through the 5th with all of our hotel partners and collaborators. But one thing we did at Meeting Expectations that we really led the industry in is we created Meetings Accomplished on our website, which allows people to actually go to our website and visit and experience and see what industries are booking, where they're going, how many people. And I have actually been to events with my clients through this pandemic. And one thing that I really love that we've changed is buffets. The day that Bob would go through the buffet line and eat while he got his salad and, you were waiting for your food, those days are gone. And the protocols put in place for that, I think, are amazing. And I'm glad that we're moving forward with that, as well as how we're cleaning a guest room. I did a video last May, and actually Elaine was with me. We visited 2 hotels in California, and I showed exactly what protocols are in place with cleaning rooms and how to save distance during a meeting. These are important facts to be able to show people that are kind of wavering if they should be attending an event or hosting an event, because it shows you that personally, I love my house, but a guest room is cleaner than anybody's house can ever be with the sanitation processes that they have in place. So it's kind of exciting to see these new protocols in a horrible, horrific situation that's transpired, that we have these new processes.
Great, thanks. Moving on, back to more incentives more broadly, while each company's needs will be different, what are the key things that a company needs to evaluate when it's considering starting or reevaluating its incentive program? Lisa, let's start with you on that one.
Well, I'm going to go into later exactly on how to build the nuts and bolts of an incentive plan. But what we always tell our clients when we're discussing starting an incentive process, because if you don't have one in place, a couple questions that you need to ask yourself is kind of what I refer to as the 80-20 rule. Is 80% of your team members, is it a team incentive, or are you motivating your team through individual rewards? So we have all of that to cover. We have Me Rewards that actually is an individual program. But the 80 rule of the team is when you're trying to create a program that is based on regionals, team experiences, sales driven, looking at volumes, all those type of things. And then we'll get into later of the exact process of how you determine destinations, et cetera. But it's really important to decide very first if you're doing this on an individual basis of a reward program or if you're creating it for a team. And we are so fortunate to be able to rely on information, i.e. From Alan with IRF and participate in that process, but also having partners, some of them actually listening to this call today, but Elaine specifically on working with our clients and finding the destinations that meet not only their budget, but their expectations of what they're trying to accomplish. It's so relative of knowing your DMCs, your locations, your resorts, and having partners that are getting involved in the culture of writing an incentive plan and executing it.
Great. And Alan, do you have anything to add from the IRF's perspective?
Sure. I'll take a little bit of a different tack because I think Lisa covered that well. I think there's a real opportunity as we're coming out of COVID into the office, even if they're going to be working virtual more, which is what we're hearing. They've been apart for 12 to 15 months now, and relationships have suffered, and that's why bringing people back together at in-person events and group travel is important. But this is also an opportunity to reset the incentive plan because there's very few more power. I don't think there's any more powerful tool at the disposal of executives and managers than incentives. And maybe you start looking at incentivizing behaviors at least as much as outcomes. So you might have said, meet quota, go on the incentive group travel or exceed quota, whatever your level is. Now you might say, we're going to recognize and reward collaboration and knowledge sharing and things that build back trust and relationships. So it is a good time to rethink what you want your incentive program to do and maybe make some adjustments to help recover from COVID.
Definitely.
Elaine, anything to add?
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with you. I think that companies now have to rethink their culture and rethink what they're doing because you're now going to be working remote, and you also have support people who are working remotely. So you really have no bond, and remote employees do not have a culture except their home. They have their home culture. So to keep the company culture and to build the loyalty to the company, the enthusiasm for what they're doing, I think the bonding and I think an incentive is going to be much more important, whether it be for 3 nights or for 2 nights or an individual incentive. I think every company has to relook at the way they do business. And I keep hearing that over and over from various companies across the country. I just read an article from Mr. Horst Schulze, who's an icon in the industry, who started the Ritz-Carlton. And basically he said the same thing. And he said that the service level in hotels, we have to rethink the way we do business in hotels. And that is why Reimagine was born. And we have to work with hotels to provide an experience. And companies have to do the same thing. They have to work with employees to provide that experience that makes you want to be loyal, want to have the culture of the company, want to stay with the company. Because I think and it is bouncing back specifically here in California and Texas and Georgia and Florida, it is bouncing back faster. And I think companies need to rethink themselves and redesign their incentives so they're not just the old way of doing things. There has to be a wellness component and there has to be an enrichment component.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Let's dive into the nuts and bolts of this. How do each of you work both independently and together with each other to actually develop and build and execute a group incentives and reward program? Lisa, why don't you start off with that?
So I have a 5 rule, and before I dive into the 5, this is anybody that's listening, this is kind of your plan in place, your takeaway notes. This is what we do when we sit down with clients and we actually execute these 5 next steps. First, you need to define clear goals for what your incentive program is. So for example, if you're a company that is driven by sales, then you obviously want to be writing this incentive program based on generating higher revenues. If you are, which we have several of, manufacturing companies that are driven by, you know, selling more trucks, selling more volume, then you obviously want to write this incentive plan based on increasing volume. The number 2 that I always tell clients is, based on your goals, create an incentive program that rewards behaviors, as Elaine was kind of talking about earlier, that benefit your business. So you kind of want to think about what methods your employees use to meet goals and which are most successful, and also look at what's not successful that you're going to add into your incentive plan to drive higher results. If your company is heavy on teamwork, then you want to write that into your incentive plan. Maybe you're having challenges with one region working with another. This is a way to put this into this plan and drive results. The individual incentive encouraged employees to work individually, and you can have it in a tier process. But this really is a way to drive everybody in regions and internationally, because we are a global economy in a global world. This is a way to drive those results. Number 3, determine the types of incentive locations that you're going to put in your budget. I always tell clients, when you're writing your budgets per year, this needs to be a line item. A good way to ensure that an incentive is effective and financially feasible is to align this with your profits. So you usually want to be thinking about this 2 years in advance and making sure that year by year that this is in your budget. And the best success stories that I've experienced with incentives are companies that, for example, let's say in 2022, you're in Hawaii. You should be announcing the last night of that incentive trip where you're going in 2023. And we are, we're relevant with partners of Reimagine, et cetera, that we're relying on them to understand what we're trying to accomplish with this incentive. So we're finding the best locations. So number 4 really is, speaks to this fact, is that offer desirable incentive locations based on your culture. I always tell clients, make sure you're sending out a survey prior to launching your incentive plan, because the culture of a technology company and a manufacturing company are substantially different. And you could have attendees that you think are going to win that are 22 to 30. That location is going to be substantially different than your winners of 45 to 60. And you have to know what your culture is. And this is where the relationship and the panel that we have today and some of the people listening are so relevant, because we dive in and really try to understand the culture of the company that we're doing the incentive with, because you have to know what works for them and what they're trying to accomplish. So it might be a company that once after they complete their survey, they only want city hotels. It may be where they only want wellness and they're all vegans mostly. You have to know what the culture is to be able to execute the appropriate incentive plan and have it work. And number 5, this is really important, is being transparent and tracking your performances. We actually work with our clients in developing those metrics, but you got to be clear on the goals. You have to tell people what the expectations are, and then the criteria needs to be on a timeline. You need to be working with the people that are in the plan of letting them know the start date is here, the end date is here, and this is what you need to do to accomplish to win this incredible incentive destination trip and experiences. And I want to just add one other dynamic with this is that getting information from IRF is relative to being able to go into a client's office, and these days virtually having these experiences and sharing exact data of locations that are great and that work and what trends are, because people want to be able to put in their surveys, this is the new trend, this is what we're seeing, so that you're creating people wanting to succeed and have this experience of going on this trip, as well as having partnerships with people like Elaine of being able to say, hey, this is the culture of this client. Can you give me some examples? Because we're experts at meeting expectations of destinations and we get to go to a lot of them, but we rely on our partnerships with hoteliers and DMCs and IRF to provide, hey, you know, this client, this is new, they're trying to do this. Can you give some examples of where this client could go? So that's our nuts and bolts on how we create to be able to launch an effective and successful event.
And so, Elaine, when Lisa comes to you with an incentive program idea, what are your steps for finding the right property or properties options to give back to her?
I think with us and with any company like us that represents unique high-end 4.5, 5-star properties that are unique locations and that are, many of them are new, we want to know what the goal is. We want to know how many people they're planning on taking, but we also want to know what ages they are, what their interests are. I think after post-pandemic, you're going to have to see people want to have experiences. They want to have memories. I think they want to build relationships, and incentives build a legacy culture that is carried on, and people get excited about them every year. And I agree with Lisa in announcing it the year before it said, or 18 months or however long your incentive period is. And what we do is we ask all of these questions like, you know, what are you looking for? What type of activities? Are you looking for an eco resort? Are they interested in an ecological environment, or in enhancing their wellness, in doing some kind of a hot springs or some type of a yoga retreat? Or are they interested in just playing golf and spa, or really are they interested in just a big party? What are they really interested in? And then we help her select the place, present it. And an incentive is important, not just in the trip, but in the promotion of the trip and beginning the trip, starting the promotion from the very beginning. When you announce it, there should be a promotion right there. There should be somebody from the hotel or the destination that comes in and pumps everybody up about the trip. And then you go on into the trip, and you should have digital communication and marketing for that trip all the way through. And then after the trip, they should be an analysis of the trip. How successful was it? What did you like best? What did you not like? And I think it's a very elite experience, and it doesn't have to be an elite trip, but you still have that elite experience. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of money or a huge amount of people. In fact, I think in post-pandemic, as we said, it's going to be smaller groups, 20, 30, 40, 50 couples going to small places. Buyouts. Would you like to buy out a resort? Then how many are you going to have? We have a little resort in the Bahamas on a private island with 12 rooms. That's a perfect for a small company that wants to do a small incentive. It's a perfect little property. They own the island. So you could actually put your logo and your design anywhere you want on that island. Literally, you can walk around it in 2 hours. So everything is custom designed, and that's what Reimagine is. It's a high-touch connection between clients like Lisa and our hotels, and we connect directly with them with the hotels. And that's what we found, is that the communication is a lot stronger, and the feeling of luxury is a lot better, and the relationship between the hotel and the client is a lot stronger. And the communication in the future will have to be much better, especially if it's an international property because of COVID and COVID protocols.
Yep.
I think everybody wants to be safe.
Definitely. And Alan, is there anything you can add about resources that the IRF can provide to those who are developing programs?
Well, the IRF site is just theirf.org. There's an enormous amount of research there on the things that Lisa and Elaine have been talking about, checklists on how to build a program, all sorts of information about what works and what may not in incentive group travel. So you'll find a whole lot there. I think Elaine and Lisa covered it pretty well and pretty thoroughly. I might only add one aspect, and it's got to do with COVID too. When you take people away on an incentive group travel trip, you are, whether it's large or small, the per person spend is typically one of the bigger amounts that you will have for a reward. I think the average is well into the 5s and 6 now. I'm sure you can do it for 4,000 per person, but you can certainly do it for 10,000 or more too, depending on the destination. So it's an investment. And you also don't want your people being taxed at the end of that. So often there's a business component. We haven't spoken about the business meeting component. It's going to be trickier with COVID-19, but we did a large study a few years ago, and surprisingly, many of the people who earn their way onto an incentive group travel trip are actually, they welcome the opportunity to spend that time in meeting with senior executives. It gives them exposure, it allows them to share their ideas. So you need to think about that in your design too. And again, with COVID, you can't cram all your people into a small space, but you can certainly keep that element in the program. And if you do so, you can avoid the taxation elements. Someone asked a question about taxation. It wasn't quite that. We might address it at the end, but I just wanted to put that in there.
Great, thanks. Lisa, last year, Meeting Expectations introduced its own customizable Me Rewards program. For those clients we're working with now to create or expand their incentives and rewards programs, what are the top 5 steps, again, with the 5 steps, that you're taking them through to execute a successful individual rewards program, and why are individual rewards appropriate?
Well, everybody knows I love 5. 5's my favorite number. So we did launch Me Rewards last year, and in talking with the panelists that we have today, individual travel obviously is up, and we kind of sat in a meeting room and said, what can we do to accomplish these goals for our clients? So I was getting a lot of demands from HR departments of, hey, how can we thank our line employees or special staff members that went above and beyond. We were getting requests from CEOs of how to thank customers. We were getting demands of, hey, we can't do our typical incentive trip and have the general manager have breakfast with everybody while on this incentive trip, as Alan was talking about. That's usually a great way that a lot of employees actually get to engage with senior leadership. So we came up with Me Rewards, and what Me Rewards allows is that we actually sit with a client and ask them the following steps. We ask them what their budget is, who they're trying to reward. So obviously when we're allowing the budgets of these individuals, the destinations that we're going to share with them would depend on what they're trying to accomplish with the winner. Does the client want air included? So some people right now during this pandemic aren't comfortable getting on an airplane. And the one dynamic that we didn't touch on that maybe Elaine can touch on in a few minutes is private air. But for Me Rewards, you have the option of air being included, not being included. You can do a budget of $1,000 up to $50,000. For a group rewards company, we also offer, if you're buying more than one package, we can create a website that the winners can go on and select what their package is. And we keep track of all the metrics involving that, of which package they chose. And then we work with the company of as kind of a conference planner that they have with Me Rewards of what dates you want to go, because you have 3 years to actualize these programs, as well as how many people are coming. So if you're in a company and you wanted to add additional people to these individual rewards, you can, if you want to bring your family. And again, we track everything. So we know exactly which packages your company has chosen, how many people are going and where they're going. And to kind of give you an example of what you can get for $1,000, you can get 3 days in Florida. $2,000 gets you a private yacht with any saltwater location that you want in, anywhere that you want to go with saltwater, and get you your own crew for 8 hours and this deep sea fishing experience. $5,000 gets you 4 days in the Greek Isles and a Riviera cruise with airfare. So these price ranges allow people to determine for individual travel what they're trying to accomplish for their award winners. And you're able to award this to anybody within your organization. And I think a lot of companies now, as Elaine was talking about culture, we're finding that, you know, the cash bonuses, again, what we had talked about earlier, everybody likes cash, but you have nothing to show for it and you don't have a memory. This allows people to have memories and moments that last forever. And then you're figuring out a way to win it again and be an exceptional employee and exceed expectations. And those are things that, you know, people are posting on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram. People aren't posting that they won $500, but they are posting they went to Greece, that their family won a trip to Florida, that they went deep sea fishing, or maybe for this Me Rewards program, you wanted to try something like NASCAR driving, or you wanted to go to a baseball game and bring 4 people. Maybe you wanted to go golfing. This allows you these experiences that you normally wouldn't have. And those are memories and moments that last forever. So that's why we created Me Rewards. And as always, we welcome the opportunity to engage with people on helping them write incentive plans to create that on an individual basis, as well as the group incentive, because they both matter in this dynamic. Rewarding employees of all levels is probably going to be what drives us to the next results for companies. It's not going to be cash rewards. Most companies are getting away from bonuses in their budgets. They're really trying to figure out a way to create these individual rewards as well as group rewards for next steps, especially after being in a pandemic. People want people to be out and about and interact and do things that and have experiences and moments. And this allows companies to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I'll say as a marketing guy, I definitely like the idea of an experience that then makes its way virally out, you know, sharing your brand with people who otherwise might not have the opportunity to see it. Elaine, what would you add to that?
You know, I would add, it's interesting. We represent Banyan Tree Hotels, and we work with a lot of individual incentives. And the interesting thing is, when we think of us as an hospitality industry as just hotels and vacations, et cetera, but when you do an incentive program, you're affecting someone's life. You're providing a lifetime memory for that person. You're emotionally changing and developing a relationship with their wives, which they probably haven't had for, you know, they've been stuck in a house, so haven't been able to go out and have fun for 15 months. And so you're giving them time to have like a second honeymoon. You're providing some incentives, even take children with them. And I would say that a private jet, using a private jet is not any more expensive than it's like flying to London. It's the same price as LA London or New York London. Private jets are pretty much competitive now. And in the future, they might even be less expensive because of the airfares are going to start going up. Private islands. If you go down, we have a beautiful hotel with private villas, 169 private villas with private pools. We in Mexico, in the Mayan Riviera, we have some residences that are private homes, 3 to 12 bedrooms, that you would stay in Costa Rica on the beach, and then you would have fly in a private jet. You could even go from the helicopter, by helicopter from the airport, and you have a private chef, and you could take 10 couples and stay in 5 homes that are each about 10,000 square feet. And it's a different experience. As a individual incentive, you can go into one of those and be in your own bubble and do everything you've ever wanted to do and have a bucket list experience, a once in a lifetime. Even if you only work for that company for 5 years and went on one incentive, you'll remember that for the rest of your life. And I've received many letters over the years from people that, just like Lisa said, that went on programs or did an individual incentive, and it was a life-changing experience. And I think that's something that we'd have to think about in the future. And when companies do incentives, they have to design something that really will fit not just the culture and the goals of the company, but the environment and what the people really want, the experiences that their people want. And I agree with Lisa too on age. It's going to be based on age and interest. But everybody wants an experience now. And
Definitely. Everybody
wants to go somewhere that's safe and that they can remember for a long, long time in the future.
Yep, absolutely. Well, this is the last question that I have here. I want to get each of your just kind of overall final thoughts on the benefits of incentive programs. And let's start with you, Alan.
Sure. We've been talking about incentive travel, individual travel. There are obviously other incentives, but we've been comparing mostly to cash. And we've been hearing, that when you create an experience, you create an emotional sort of reaction that creates memories. And you might be wondering, well, how does that translate into something of benefit to the company? Certainly benefits the individual, and we know that. The IRF has done a fair bit of neuroscience-based research over the last couple of years. Marketing had done this with biometrics for many years before we started doing it around incentives. And it's very interesting. When you do create an experience that creates a memory, you create, in many cases, most cases, what's called a reciprocity effect. And that just means that a person wants to return the favor. So if they enjoyed the experience and they've got a memory of it,
Right.
they're very likely to work harder when they return to the office to earn the next trip the following year, of course, but also because they have that sort of need to reciprocate. And that's a very human thing, and it is maybe not universal. Maybe everyone doesn't feel that way, but the majority of people do. So that's a reason why it is better than cash, because cash doesn't really do that for the business. Thing we've seen, and you'll see if you do look back at the research, that a high percentage of people will tell you if you give them a choice that they want cash. I'll just take the money, give me the money. But when we've done the biometric research, and that involves tracking eye movements, hooking people up to sensors to track their heart rate, even their perspiration, what we found is that people are subconsciously drawn to the travel more than anything else. And that even though we may present cash, their eyes go towards the travel, towards the experience, as Elaine was just talking about, and Lisa before her. So we know on a subconscious level that people are interested in this. We know that when they return from incentive travel, that the return on investment is very high when it's tracked. And we know at the end of this experiment, where we actually let people sit down and think about it consciously, this time 36 out of 40 people who had all the equipment attached to them, who were all of them attracted to subconsciously to the non-cash reward. 36 out of 40 said ultimately they would choose the non-cash reward, even if the cash was available. The 4 people who said they would choose cash almost apologized. They said they had a child in college, they had some pressing need for cash at that moment. So that's how I would finish, Joy.
Well, thank you. Elaine, what are your final thoughts?
Well, I'm going to do Lisa with her 5. I'm going to be my 5, Elaine's 5. So first of all, I think it improves retention. People want to stay. They want to go on the trip. They come back. They think, oh, wow, where are we going next year? How are we going to top this? I've heard that many times when I used to work as a client. How are you going to top last year's trip? How are you going to top it? Reinforces positive organizational culture. It changes the culture. It builds the culture. It builds, I would think it builds motivation more than anything. And it takes business away from the competition because they're motivated to go get more business and increase and make the trip. It provides employee recognition. And as Alan said, it gives networking opportunities with the top executives of the company. And in big companies, if you're in a big tech company, you may never, ever see the CEO and sit next to him at dinner. But on an incentive trip, you can. And you can stay in a private villa, in a private pool, and you can go to his presidential villa, and you can spend 2 hours sitting with him and exchanging ideas, like 10 couples. So it gives them a moment of recognition that is unique in this business. So I think those are the main things, and it creates a culture, a legacy culture for a company. And they can then just continue to build on that. And Alan, I'm sure you have your research numbers, but I had read that at least 33% of the attendees at incentive trips are repeat. And it might be more than that. I don't know, but that's what I had read not too long ago. So your top people stay because they want to. I'm ready to go on one.
I think I am too. Lisa, what are some of your final thoughts?
I agree with everything everybody said. I mean, you really are driving retention within your company. You're driving results. I found it interesting that an HR director reached out to me a couple weeks ago, and they were writing job descriptions. And one of the items that they're adding in their rewards program is having a rewards program. And I think we're going to see this with companies moving forward, that maybe you're not going to make the high salaries, but this is going to be an added benefit, just like your health benefits and your 401k, because it does drive results. And so to be part of those experiences, and this is the sappy part of me, to see the winners, to get the notes, to hear that it was successful, to hear the reward winners and their experiences of how they got from point A to the success of winning the trip, is just what this is all about. And to be part of those moments is just extraordinary. And to be able to go on location and experience these destinations with the partners and the DMCs and the hoteliers and IRF and all these people that go into making a successful incentive, whether it's individual or group, is just an extraordinary job to have every day.
It is.
Yep, great. Well, thank you all. We've got a couple of questions that have trickled in, and we've got about 5 minutes to touch on them. The first one I think will be a quick question. It's more logistical. Our company is currently mandating COVID-19 testing for our incentive attendees prior to their departure and prior to leaving to go back home. Do you have any companies in mind that do bulk COVID testing? Lisa, I know that I believe we at Meeting Expectations have had direct experience with some companies, so I know they exist. Can you speak to that?
We do, and that's probably something we can send them offline of exact companies that are doing that, because it depends on your location and also your budget of what you're trying to accomplish. So yes, it does exist, and we can provide the best option that'll meet and exceed that client's question.
Great. And then another question, and this is kind of a fun one, and we've got just a couple minutes for each of you, but tell us about your favorite incentive destinations right now, and what are the up and coming destinations. So let's see, Alan, let's start with you.
My all-time favorites are Italy and South Africa. We had to cancel our big family trip to South Africa when COVID hit. That was unfortunate, but looking forward to one of those two places. But I think trending, maybe we're actually working on a destinations research report now, so I'll have a better answer in a few months about what other people are thinking. But just from what we've seen, once we get past the let's go to a local outdoor sort of venue, I'm kind of with Elaine. I think some of the more exotic, international destinations that you can kind of brag about a little bit, if brag's not too negative a word, are going to be very popular, I think. Yeah.
Elaine, what are some of your favorites?
My favorites, well, of course, I love South Africa too. Alan's, I'm ready to go with you on safari. But as far as up and coming, I think Greece is an up and comer. I think the Greek islands, it's funny, Greece sort of disappeared for a while, but and we have 3 new hotels opening in the Greek islands. Every single one of our Greek hotels is opening in May, but for the first time, did not close. It's just brand new. And I think what you're going to see is a lot of people going to islands. Maldives is another one that we are working with a lot. And Mozambique off the coast of, if you go on safari, extend to Mozambique, we have there's 2 little islands that one has 20 rooms and one has 40 rooms. They're a mile apart by boat. We provide the boat and you literally own the island. So places like that. There's a small island in French Polynesia that we're working with that is owned by the owner of the Cirque du Soleil, and they're all private villas, and you fly in a private jet. Those to me are bucket list adventures, and I think that's what's going to be happening in the future in Peru, and also there's a little island off of Brazil with 3 different posadas with 13 rooms and 10 rooms that are very high end that we work with, as well as some in Costa Rica. And then I think domestically, Mexico is still going to be a hot tamale. And there are so many new small boutique hotels opening in Mexico in unique areas, as well as I think Costa Rica will be a new and up and coming destination. For a while it was successful, but there were big hotels, and now it's all villas and residences that is there and growing. So I think it's going to be a very different world, and people are going to want to travel distances, just like Alan said.
Definitely lots of neat ideas. Lisa, do you have any final thoughts on your up and coming destinations?
Well, they took all of mine. I would say one of my favorite places, and anybody that knows me, is Morocco. But what I'm seeing, I love going to California. I took up surfing at 50 and attempt to do that every time I go visit Elaine out in California and some other friends. I'm a late bloomer to the surfboard. But I think we're going to see California also coming back as a domestic location and everything that it has to offer, as well as Hawaii. Where Hawaii wasn't affordable before for incentives that had got a little pricey. I think what the airlines are doing and how they're partnering with us, DMCs and hoteliers, on next steps for incentives moving forward, I think Hawaii's going to be hot in the year ahead.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Lisa, Elaine, and Alan, for sharing your insights and experience around incentive and reward programs. And thanks to everyone who joined us for our panel discussion today. As a reminder, the recording of this webinar will be available in the next few days on the Meeting Expectations website at meetingexpectations.com. Meeting Expectations is a full-service event and association management company, and we would love the opportunity to talk with you about your challenges and successes regarding events or associations, or how we can help you with an incentive program. Please drop us a line at info@meetingexpectations.com or on our website at meetingexpectations.com/contact, or connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, bye.